We have this new video from the Pentagon to show you. The U.S. says that this shows Iranian forces removing an unexploded mine from a tanker in the Gulf of Oman. Defense officials believe Iranians were trying to get rid of evidence here. Now, this incident comes at a time of escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran. Adding support for the U.S. claims, the United Kingdom now says it has no doubts over the validity of this video.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
I want to go first to CNN's Michelle Kaczynski with this new video released, which the Pentagon seems to suggest the Iranians were behind the attack on these tankers.
Yeah, we're also seeing a much different tack now from the last time this happened, only weeks ago, when other ships were attacked in the Persian Gulf. The administration was very reluctant to even say that Iran was suspected. It was more than a week later, and the Secretary of State was saying maybe Iran was behind it. Now, though, we see them get out there immediately, publicly, definitively saying this was Iran, and here's some evidence.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran.
This dramatic new video released overnight shows a small boat approaching the Kokuka Courageous tanker. You can see an individual removing an object from the tanker's hull. U.S. military officials say that object is likely an unexploded mine, removed by Iranians just hours after the initial explosion. The Secretary of State firing back.
Foreign Minister Zarif may think this is funny, but no one else in the world does.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
The Japanese are coordinating with the United States and investigating the attack on its tanker, but at this point are not blaming Iran. I
frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accusing Iran of carrying out the attacks, using the video as his evidence.
Iran is lashing out because the regime wants our successful maximum pressure campaign lifted.
Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode.
U.S. defense officials believe Iran recovered the device to remove any evidence of their involvement in the attack. The military also releasing this photo of the ship's hull that they say shows the damage from one explosion and the likely unexploded mine.
Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall we had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode.
And that same month, the U.S. deployed the USS Abraham Lincoln to the region to combat other threats from Iran.
We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded.
The incident in the Gulf of Oman follows months of escalation in the region. In May, National Security Advisor John Bolton accused Iran of executing an attack on 4 oil tankers.
I can say that we have a president of the United States who is completely and totally opposed to the regime in Tehran. These sanctions, when they are put in place, will be because of the regime's suppression of its own people. Although the regime in Tehran has said if these sanctions are enacted into law, they will consider it a breach of the agreement. That the Tehran regime is the central problem in the Middle East, that the declared policy of the United States of America should be the overthrow of the mullah's regime in Tehran. The behavior and the objectives of the regime are not going to change, and therefore the only solution is to change the regime itself. And that's why before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. Thank you very much.
An international investigation said a state actor was likely to blame.
Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor.
And over the last few weeks, the Trump administration has faced some criticism and questions over what proof is there really that Iran was behind several incidents.
And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack.
Now they put out some evidence. Is that to head off that criticism? Is it to justify potentially whatever the U.S. response will be? We don't know, but we did see the Secretary of State yesterday meeting with the acting Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon. Also this morning, we're just hearing from a senior diplomatic source of a U.S. ally who says that they believe that it is a virtual certainty that Iran was behind this latest attack and that the video nails it.
Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests.
And I want to start with this new video we're just trying to analyze now, released overnight, which Pentagon officials say shows the Iranians removing this mine from this vessel as some kind of cover-up. Let me ask you this. Does this, in your mind, prove the Iranians were behind it, and why would they do this?
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
Well, look, this is a pretty compelling evidence offered by the United States. I think it's interesting if you start to see U.S. allies as well weighing in and saying that they find it to be convincing evidence. Iran is the likeliest suspect in this situation. It carries echoes of previous rounds of tension, ratcheting up threats to tankers going through the Straits of Hormuz, one of the riskiest global flashpoints that there is, in the sense that it's a bottleneck. These tankers are often sitting ducks. We, harken back to the 1980s and the tanker war. There's already talk that perhaps we should have U.S. warships escorting tankers through the Straits in order to head off a future round of this. But pulling back, the question is, where are we going with this? Let's take the administration's claim at face value that the Iranians are responsible. I guess my question is, what's next? What's going to follow as a result of this? The administration has talked, you saw Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, about the success of what it calls its maximum pressure campaign. But the question is, success toward what? The United States has pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. It's ratcheted up sanctions. It sought once again to isolate Iran. If this is the Iranian response, I think it's greatly increased the risks of military conflict and war on both sides.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.